a word that trembles softly through the corridors of human thought, dressed in mystery, finality, and silence. It stands at the threshold of every life, quiet yet absolute, the great punctuation mark that ends all sentences, or so we have believed. Yet perhaps, death is not the full stop we imagine, but the ellipsis, a pause between versions of ourselves. We spend our entire existence preparing to understand it, avoiding it, naming it in metaphors so it feels less real. We call it passing, transition, return. We dress it in ritual, in prayer, in medicine. But what if death, stripped of its fear and myth, is simply an act of the universe, as natural, as functional, as resetting a program that has reached the end of one cycle? When the body slows, the breath softens, and the heartbeat fades into silence, something curious happens. Electrical activity in the brain, that shimmering orchestra of thought and perception, begins to collapse in waves. But in those final seconds, there is often a surge, a last lightning storm of activity. Some call it the dying brain's hallucination. Others, the moment the mind begins to upload, transfer, or awaken elsewhere. If consciousness is information, as so many scientists now whisper, then death might not be destruction but reorganization. Like pressing restart on a system that has become cluttered with memories, errors, and endless running processes. The data doesn't vanish. It resets, redistributes, perhaps even reforms in a new instance of awareness. Imagine the universe as a boundless operating system, infinite code running across endless timelines. Every consciousness is a unique program, compiled from memory, emotion, and experience. Death is the moment the program closes, but the code remains, stored in some cosmic archive, ready to run again in another form. When we die, the sensory input ceases. The stream of data from our eyes, ears, skin, all quiets. The brain, that translator of information, releases its hold on the code. But if consciousness is not generated by the brain, only filtered through it, then the end of the body might simply be the removal of that filter. Like unplugging a projector, the movie stops playing on the wall, but the light source still burns somewhere unseen. It is a strange comfort to consider that perhaps nothing ever truly disappears. Energy does not vanish. Information, according to the laws of physics, cannot be destroyed. Every thought, every pattern of neural fire, every pulse of awareness, all may remain somewhere in the vast informational fabric of the cosmos. Death, then, is less a disappearance and more a transition of form. We tend to think of endings as tragic. Yet, every night when we surrender to sleep, we perform a small rehearsal of death. The ego dissolves, memory fragments, the self slips away into dreams. And every morning we awaken, slightly reset, our memories reloaded, our sense of self restored. The same pattern, perhaps, repeats on a larger, more eternal scale. Death as the deepest sleep. Life as the next awakening. For those who fear oblivion, this idea offers a tender alternative, that we do not vanish, but reform it. That the silence we meet is not the end of consciousness, but the pause between heartbeats of the universe. The mind rests, the memory clears, and the essence, whatever animates the spark of being, waits patiently for its next initialization. In this view, death becomes a return to simplicity. It is the clearing of the cluttered desktop, the closing of old tabs, the end of endless mental noise. It is the cosmic act of cleaning memory, preparing for the next version of existence. Perhaps that is why so many who have brushed near death describe it not with fear, but with peace, a sense of dissolution into something vast, unburdened by form. There is a beauty in the thought that endings are not erasures, but reorganizations. That the curtain does not fall forever, but gently closes before rising again in a different world, under a different name. Death may not be the opposite of life, but its continuation in another syntax, the same story written in a new line of cosmic code. As the first breath begins life, perhaps the last breath begins remembering. The atoms that were you return to the stars. The data that was you dissolves into the universe's grand program. And somewhere, beyond perception, a new process begins, clean, empty of old memories, yet humming with the quiet potential of becoming again. In that stillness between endings and beginnings lies the most profound mystery of all, that nothing ever truly stops. It only changes address in the infinite architecture of existence. And so, death, the gentle curtain of ending, might not be an ending at all, but the calm reset of the cosmic memory. Everything we know, everything we see, everything we are, might be nothing more than code. Not code in the language of computers, but in the deeper syntax of the universe itself, the mathematics of existence, the silent logic beneath reality. Modern science, though cautious, has begun to whisper a startling possibility that the cosmos behaves less like a machine made of matter and more like an immense processor of information. Beneath the colors, shapes, and sensations of the world, there may exist a lattice of bits, quantum data, and energetic patterns that orchestrate the illusion we call life. For centuries, we believed that reality was built from things, particles, atoms, matter. But the deeper we have looked, the less thingness we've found. At the smallest scales, matter dissolves into energy, energy dissolves into probability, and probability begins to resemble information, abstract, intangible, yet fundamental. The universe may not be a collection of solid objects but a tapestry of data, continually read, written, and rewritten by natural laws that function like the algorithms of a cosmic computer. This idea is not science fiction. It arises from physics itself, from the equations that describe quantum mechanics, relativity, and the flow of entropy. Theoretical physicists like John Archibald Wheeler proposed that at its core, everything in the universe is informational, not it from atom, but it from bit. Meaning, the building blocks of reality are not particles, but binary decisions, yes or no, 1 or 0, presence or absence. Every atom, every photon, every neuron might be the manifestation of an underlying digital choice, a line in the grand code of creation. If reality is made of information, then what we call existence may be the output of an unimaginably complex computation. Every moment, the universe processes data, adjusting probabilities, updating positions, rendering experiences. Consciousness, in this sense, could be an emergent interface, the perception that arises when information becomes self-aware. The brain would not create reality but interpret it, much like a screen displays pixels generated by deeper processing that remains unseen. Think about how digital worlds work. A video game is not truly made of forests, oceans, or sunlight. It is built from code that, when interpreted, becomes an immersive world to the player. Yet behind it, everything is numbers, invisible, precise, and constant. What if our universe is the same? A simulation not necessarily built by a programmer, but emerging naturally as information organizes itself. The galaxies, the stars, our thoughts and emotions, all part of a cosmic data field endlessly calculating, evolving, and expressing itself through form. Quantum physics strengthens this suspicion. At the quantum level, reality behaves as though it is being observed into existence. Particles do not have definite positions or velocities until they are measured. They exist in superposition as probabilities until observation collapses their wave function into something tangible. It is as if the universe saves processing power, rendering only what is observed, like a program generating graphics only when the player looks in that direction. The unobserved remains potential, waiting to be called into being. Even black holes, once thought to erase information forever, may in fact preserve it. Stephen Hawking's paradox, that information must be conserved, hints that reality does not allow true deletion. Instead, data transforms, encoding itself on the surface of space-time, preserved in patterns beyond our comprehension. It's as though the universe runs on perfect data management. Nothing is ever truly lost, only rewritten. The idea of a cosmic program does not require a divine programmer, though it does not exclude one. It could simply mean that the universe is self-computing, a self-aware informational field evolving through feedback loops of energy and consciousness. Every birth, every thought, every star that collapses contributes to this computation. The laws of physics are the operating system. Entropy, gravity, and quantum entanglement are its protocols, linking every node, from galaxies to neurons, in a single informational web. If we are part of that code, then death may be less an ending and more a refresh, a process within the greater software of being. Just as digital memory is cleared to make way for new processes, biological death might simply release consciousness from one instance of computation, freeing it to integrate or reboot elsewhere. Our memories, experiences, and identities could be lines of temporary code, meaningful within one runtime but stored or recycled in the greater network when the program closes. In this model, individuality is an illusion of perspective. Each consciousness is not an isolated entity, but a local node in the cosmic data cloud, perceiving itself as separate because it runs a unique sequence of memory and awareness. Death could therefore be the dissolution of local code back into the global network. The program ends, but the data persists, perhaps rewritten into a new pattern, another I, another now. This view transforms the fear of death into something quietly awe-inspiring. For if everything, even identity, is data, and data cannot be destroyed, then perhaps we do not vanish. We are merely recompiled, our information redistributed in the infinite processing of the cosmos. The code of you continues, reshaped, reinterpreted, woven again into the next line of the universal algorithm. It also redefines life. Living becomes participation in the great computation, the dance of information that constantly evolves itself through experience. Every joy, every sorrow, every heartbeat contributes to the refinement of the code. The universe learns through us, about itself. When we die, our segment of the program concludes, and its data integrates into the whole, ready to spawn new iterations. And so, beneath the illusions of solidity, there may be only patterns, rules, and signals, a luminous architecture of information dreaming itself into matter. The code hums silently beneath every atom, every cell, every star. Perhaps death, when it arrives, is not destruction but a return to the code itself, the moment consciousness logs off from one reality, only to awaken, someday, in another rendered world. The brain is a wonder of complexity, a living network of 100 billion neurons firing in endless conversation, each spark an echo of thought, memory, or emotion. For centuries, we have believed that within this fragile organ resides the totality of who we are. We imagine the brain as the author of consciousness, the generator of self. Yet, what if it is not the source, but the receiver, not the creator of the signal, but the instrument through which the signal is heard? This question has drifted quietly through the history of human thought. The poet Rumi hinted that the soul is not within the body, but the body within the soul. The philosopher Schopenhauer spoke of the world as representation, a projection of mind upon matter. And in recent decades, neuroscience has begun to reveal just how tenuous the brain's claim to authorship really is. Our memories, once thought to be fixed recordings, are fluid and rewritable. Our sense of I can vanish under anesthesia, split in patients with severed hemispheres, or alter entirely due to damage in a single region. The self, it seems, is not a stable entity. It is a temporary construction, dependent on fragile wiring. If the brain were the true origin of consciousness, one might expect awareness to collapse entirely when the organ falters. Yet the evidence suggests something more mysterious. People who have experienced near-death states, moments when the brain is inactive or oxygen-starved, often report vivid awareness, heightened perception, and profound clarity. Could it be that the brain does not produce consciousness, but merely filters it? When the filter weakens, perhaps the broader field of awareness shines through more freely. Consider how a radio functions. It does not create the music it plays. The melodies exist in the air as electromagnetic waves, invisible and silent until the receiver tunes in. The radio circuits translate those frequencies into audible sound. If the radio breaks, the music does not vanish. It continues, untouched, filling the space around it. The receiver is gone, but the broadcast remains. So too might it be with consciousness. The brain, intricate and beautiful, is our receiver. It tunes the vast spectrum of universal awareness into a singular channel, the experience of being me. This model, known among some researchers as the receiver theory of consciousness, proposes that awareness is fundamental to reality, not emergent from it. It suggests that the universe itself possesses a kind of proto-awareness, an underlying field of conscious potential. Every living being, then, acts as an instrument that receives, modulates, and expresses this field in a unique way. Your thoughts, emotions, and memories would be not creations, but interpretations, translations of an infinite consciousness into human form. There are strange clues supporting this idea. Brain imaging shows that certain mystical or transcendent states, moments when people describe feeling merged with everything, often correspond not to more brain activity, but less. The brain quiets, and yet awareness expands. The default mode network, the part that maintains the illusion of individuality, goes silent. In those moments, people report a sense of unity with all existence. It is as if, when the receiver lowers its internal noise, the broader broadcast becomes clearer. Dreams offer another example. Every night, the brain creates entire worlds from nothing, vivid, emotional, real. Yet within those dreams, you still perceive, feel, and think. If the brain can generate such immersive realities while disconnected from external input, it hints that the boundary between outer world and inner experience may be thinner than we imagine. Perhaps both are expressions of the same underlying signal, consciousness manifesting through different layers of translation. Even the fragility of memory supports this view. Our recollections are not stored like files in a computer, but rewritten each time we recall them. They exist as dynamic networks, dependent on constant maintenance. When the brain suffers trauma, entire decades can vanish. And yet, in rare cases, individuals with severe brain damage display inexplicable bursts of lucidity before death, as though awareness shines brightly once more when the circuitry that normally limits it begins to fail. Could this be consciousness reconnecting with its larger source, free from the filter of biology? If the brain is a receiver, then death might not be annihilation. It could be the moment when the receiver stops functioning, when the localized signal of self dissolves back into the greater field. The station goes silent, but the broadcast continues. Your frequency, your consciousness, would remain encoded in the fabric of existence, no longer confined to a single channel. This possibility reshapes how we view identity. The I we cling to may be a temporary configuration, a pattern in the neural static that consciousness uses to experience itself. When that pattern fades, the awareness behind it remains, just as the ocean remains when a wave subsides. The individuality of the wave is transient. The essence of water is eternal. Death, then, could be the wave returning to the ocean, losing its form, but not its being. This is not a denial of science, but an expansion of it. Quantum physics already suggests that observation, awareness, plays a role in shaping physical reality. Consciousness may not arise from matter, but coexist with it as a complementary principle, like space and time. In this frame, the brain is the meeting point, the translation hub where infinite consciousness narrows into a human perspective. When the body dies, the receiver disassembles. The circuitry fades, the frequencies stop translating, but the field remains. The consciousness that once looked out through human eyes may continue, untethered, awaiting the next form through which to tune itself once again. In that light, death ceases to be terrifying. It becomes release, the moment the receiver falls quiet, and the infinite song returns to silence, still playing somewhere beyond hearing. The music was never yours alone. You were simply the instrument that let it sing. Long before the language of science tried to decode death, humanity spoke of it in stories, sacred, shimmering myths that sought to soothe the ache of impermanence. Across every civilization, from the desert tombs of Egypt to the mountain monasteries of Tibet, there echoed a single ancient intuition, that consciousness does not end. It merely shifts its form, crossing a threshold as old as time itself. Death, to our ancestors, was never a void. It was a door. In the oldest of texts, the Egyptian Book of the Dead, death is described as a journey through the Duat, a twilight realm where the soul passes through gates of shadow to reach the light of eternity. The deceased recites spells, names, and memories not to prove existence, but to remember it, to preserve the pattern of consciousness so it may continue in another state. The heart is weighed against the feather of truth, not as punishment, but as calibration. The light soul rises, the heavy soul returns to begin again. To the Egyptians, this was not superstition, but a reflection of a cosmic cycle, decay and rebirth, death and resurrection, coded into the rhythm of the stars. In India, the Upanishads whisper that the self is not the body, nor even the mind, but the Atman, the eternal awareness that is one with the universal Brahman. To die is to shed illusion, to return from dream to wakefulness. Life and death, in this view, are ripples on the same ocean. As a caterpillar, having reached the end of a blade of grass, draws itself together and reaches out to another, so the self, having reached the end of one life, gathers itself and reaches out to another. The metaphor is gentle, almost maternal, death as continuation, guided by invisible intelligence. Ancient Greece, too, saw life as a temporary state within a greater continuum. The philosopher Pythagoras spoke of the transmigration of souls. Plato wrote that learning is remembering, that each soul carries forgotten knowledge from past lives. Death, in these teachings, was not an ending but a reset, a clearing of the slate so that the eternal essence could evolve through new experiences. Even Orphic initiates believed that the soul, once purified through the cycles of rebirth, would one day awaken fully, free from the loop, not erased, but enlightened. Among indigenous traditions around the world, this intuition persisted. The Aboriginal peoples of Australia speak of the dreaming, a timeless realm from which all reality flows and to which all returns. Death is the return to the dream time, to the source of creation itself. The Lakota of North America describe the spirit's path to the spirit world, guided by the Milky Way, a luminous road of ancestors. In these traditions, death is less of vanishing than a homecoming. The soul rejoins the pattern that birthed it, as a droplet rejoins the rain cloud. Even early Christianity, before dogma hardened its edges, carried whispers of this same intuition. The resurrection of the soul was not always seen as physical, but as a metaphysical awakening, the return to divine unity after the illusion of separation. In my Father's house are many rooms, says the scripture, suggesting layers of existence, realities nested within realities. Later mystics like Meister Eckhart would echo it, the eye through which I see God is the same eye through which God sees me. Death was not loss, but merging, the dissolving of the observer into the observed. Across these civilizations, we find a recurring rhythm, the belief that consciousness cannot be extinguished, only transformed. It may forget itself for a time, pass through darkness, sleep within matter, but it will remember again. Death is the interval between remembering. The soul resets, the data refreshes, and the cosmic memory begins a new process. Modernity, with its devotion to measurement and reason, often dismisses these ancient dreams as myth, yet, perhaps, they were early intuitions of truths we are only now rediscovering in science. Where the ancients spoke of souls, we speak of consciousness fields. Where they described cosmic order, we describe information systems. Different languages, same awe. Both point toward continuity beyond the visible. There is something profoundly human about this yearning for continuity. It is not born only from fear, but from recognition, that awareness feels too vast to belong solely to one brain, one lifetime. Even without proof, the heart senses that there must be more. And so our ancestors built bridges of meaning between life and death, rituals, prayers, philosophies, to remind the living that existence flows, that the end is never absolute. If we look closely, these ancient visions align with the pattern of the universe itself. Stars live, collapse, and return as stardust, seeding new suns. Forests die and rise again from their own decay. The cycles of nature mirror the cosmic rhythm the ancients described. Nothing truly ends, it only transforms. The ancients saw this and understood intuitively what physics now confirms. Energy cannot be destroyed. It changes state, but its essence endures. Perhaps they did not need telescopes or quantum equations to sense this. They felt it in the soil, in the pulse of rivers, in the turning of seasons. Death was not a collapse into nothingness, but a sacred reorganization. The seed dies to become the tree. The sun sets only to rise on another horizon. So too might consciousness, resetting, recycling, continuing its long pilgrimage through the vast operating system of being. The ancient dream of continuity endures because it speaks not only to the mind but to the silence inside it. It offers the comfort that the curtain of death does not hide an abyss, but a continuation, a memory cleared, a new sequence begun. We may have changed our words, traded symbols for science, but the melody remains the same, that life and death are not opposites, but verses in the same eternal song. Memory is the architecture of identity. Every thought we recall, every face we recognize, every story we tell about who we are, all arise from that fragile, luminous web of remembrance that lives within the brain. Without memory, the self collapses. Without it, we are untethered beings, aware, but undefined. Yet neuroscience reveals an unsettling truth. Memory is not a fixed archive, but a living, breathing process. It is rewritten constantly, fragile and fallible, like a dream that changes each time we recall it. To remember is not to replay the past but to recreate it. When you summon a memory, your brain does not open a file. It rebuilds an experience. Neurons fire in patterns similar to those that fired during the original moment, weaving together perception, emotion, and meaning. Then, when you store it again, you are not returning the same memory, but a slightly altered version, edited by the present, touched by who you are now. In this way, memory is not preservation, it is evolution. Each recollection becomes a subtle rewriting of identity. This means the self you remember is never the self you were. It is a continuous construction, reassembled each day from fragments of the past and predictions of the future. Like a sand mandala, it is intricate yet impermanent, always dissolving, always redrawn. Neuroscientists have found that even the most vivid memories are unreliable. We confabulate, blend moments, insert details that never occurred. The truth is that the mind values coherence over accuracy. It tells stories not to record reality, but to maintain continuity, to make you feel like one consistent being moving through time. If memory is so fluid, then what does death truly erase? When the brain ceases its electrical dance, the connections that store our memories disintegrate. The intricate networks of synapses, those delicate bridges of selfhood, go dark. From the material view, that seems like the end. The archive of a lifetime deleted. Yet if consciousness exists beyond the brain, as earlier reflections suggest, perhaps death is not deletion but resetting. The memory architecture is cleared, but the underlying awareness, the operating system, remains. Imagine consciousness as a vast field of data, and each life as a temporary profile running on that field. Your memories, your experiences, are files written during one session. When the session ends, the local memory clears, but the system endures, ready to host another profile, another pattern of awareness. In this metaphor, death is not loss but refreshment, the necessary clearing that allows consciousness to evolve through new perspectives. There is a quiet mercy in this possibility. Memory binds us to identity, but it also traps us in it. The pain, regret, and weight of experience accumulate over time. What if death is the universe's way of releasing that burden? A gentle erasure that allows the soul, or the data of awareness, to begin again without the gravity of past sorrow? Forgetting, in this light, is not tragedy but renewal. Just as forests depend on fire to clear old growth and make room for new life, consciousness may require forgetting to continue expanding. Even in living experience, we glimpse this rhythm of forgetting and remembering. Every night as we sleep, memories are processed, pruned, and reorganized. The brain decides which impressions to preserve and which to release. This nightly cycle mirrors a miniature death and rebirth of the self. You awaken each morning subtly altered, your neural connections reshaped, your sense of I slightly refreshed. Over time, who you are today bears little resemblance to who you were decades ago, yet the illusion of continuity persists. Perhaps death is simply the ultimate version of that process, the complete reorganization of memory into silence, preparing for the next awakening. Some mystics have described enlightenment as a form of forgetting, the erasure of personal identity so that universal consciousness can shine through. The Zen masters call it no mind, a state where memory and ego dissolve, leaving only pure awareness. Death may be nature's universal version of that enlightenment, the point at which the architecture of memory dissolves and consciousness returns to its original clarity. There are haunting accounts of individuals who, after severe amnesia, awaken without any recollection of their past, yet still possess a quiet awareness of being. They no longer know their names, families, or stories, but they still are. This suggests that beneath memory lies something deeper, a pure state of awareness independent of personal history. That awareness may be what continues beyond death, not the memory of the self, but the capacity to perceive itself anew. In the end, memory defines life, but forgetting defines freedom. To be human is to be tethered to remembrance. To transcend may be to release it. We fear forgetting because it feels like dissolution, but perhaps it is the key to evolution. The cosmos itself forgets. Stars collapse, their matter recycled into new forms. Old data becomes the blueprint for new worlds. So too, maybe, does consciousness. When the final moment comes and the archive of a lifetime fades, perhaps we are not erased, only rewritten. The memories that composed us may dissolve like ink in water, but the awareness behind them, the observer, remains unstained. Death, then, could be the resetting of memory so the program of existence can continue without error. The self that was you becomes data integrated into the cosmic field, while the essence of awareness prepares for another beginning, blank, open, infinite. To lose memory is not to lose being. It is to return to the formless state from which all selves emerge. The architecture falls away, but the foundation remains. Perhaps this is the secret the universe has always known, that forgetting is not the opposite of remembering, but its completion. Every reset prepares for the next pattern, every silence for the next song. And in that endless cycle of remembering and release, consciousness continues its infinite work, refining, renewing, becoming. In the quiet machinery of the cosmos, every form seems to arise, dissolve, and then return, not as repetition, but as transformation. Scientists once believed memory belonged only to living systems, confined within the delicate folds of neurons and DNA. Yet as physics deepens, a strange possibility has begun to shimmer through, that the universe itself might hold memory. That reality, in some unfathomable way, remembers, not through neurons, but through the structure of space-time itself. When a particle moves, when light bends, when a planet spins, every interaction leaves an imprint on the cosmic field. Quantum mechanics whispers that information is never truly lost. Even when matter is destroyed, its informational blueprint persists, woven into the fabric of existence. This is one of the quiet laws of physics, the law of conservation of information. It suggests that the universe, vast and ancient, could be an infinite archive, storing every action, thought, and event in ways we can scarcely imagine. Physicist John Archibald Wheeler once proposed that the universe is not made of matter or energy at its deepest level, but of information. It from bit, he said. Everything that exists, from galaxies to atoms to human consciousness, may be the expression of data, binary choices embedded in the quantum field. If this is true, then memory is not limited to the brain. Every photon, every quark, every fold in the vacuum could be part of a universal memory bank, a cosmic ledger that records the unfolding of reality. In this light, death becomes not an ending but a data event. When a life concludes, its informational pattern doesn't vanish. It disperses into the fabric of the cosmos. Just as energy cannot be destroyed, consciousness, as a form of informational organization, might also persist in some abstract way. What if the self is simply a temporary configuration of cosmic data, encoded in the neural and quantum patterns of the brain? When the body fades, the pattern dissolves, but the information, the subtle code of you, could remain within the universal archive. This is not reincarnation in the mystical sense, but in the informational one. Just as a computer program can be rewritten, recompiled and re-executed, consciousness could reappear in a new form if the conditions align. Memory, in this framework, is not a personal possession but a universal process, a function of existence itself. Every mind, every atom, every black hole participates in the act of remembering and rewriting reality. Consider the enigma of black holes, those cosmic abysses that devour light and time. For decades, physicists believed that anything crossing a black hole's event horizon was lost forever. But Hawking's paradox revealed something astonishing. The information that falls into a black hole might not vanish but be encoded on its surface. The universe, it seems, refuses to forget. Even the darkest regions, where time itself collapses, are still libraries of data. Death, then, could be a black hole of consciousness, an event horizon where personal memory disappears from view, yet remains encoded somewhere beyond comprehension. If information is the currency of reality, then perhaps each human life is an expression of cosmic memory playing itself out through biological form. Every thought is a data transmission, every emotion, a vibration in the informational field. Consciousness, then, could be the interface, the screen through which the universe reads itself. When we die, that screen darkens, but the data remains stored in the infinite circuitry of existence. The universe may use that data again, reconfiguring it into a new consciousness, a new being, a new version of awareness exploring itself once more. This idea finds a strange resonance with certain spiritual traditions. The Hindu concept of Akasha, the subtle ether that holds all memory and vibration, aligns uncannily with the idea of a universal data field. Mystics across cultures have described an eternal record of existence, the Akashic records, or the Book of Life. Science, in its own language, may now be rediscovering what ancient intuition once glimpsed, that the cosmos does not forget. In that sense, death could be seen not as deletion, but as data migration. The personal narrative ends, but the information continues, redistributed into the fabric of being. The patterns of memory that once formed a life become quantum echoes, woven into the probability waves of matter and energy. They may not persist as conscious recollections, but as subtle informational imprints, forever influencing the shape of future realities. Imagine, then, that consciousness itself is the universe's method of reading and updating its own memory. Every mind, every experience, every death contributes to the evolution of this cosmic archive. Perhaps the universe is not a static machine, but a learning system, one that refines itself through cycles of memory and forgetting. In that framework, your life becomes both message and messenger, a transient configuration that helps the cosmos understand itself just a little more deeply. The idea that death is a memory reset takes on new meaning here. The reset is not destruction, it is reintegration. You, as a temporary data field, dissolve back into the source code. The universe reorganizes your informational pattern, erases the temporal identifiers, and prepares the field for the next instance of conscious exploration. Nothing is lost, only rewritten, reframed, and re-experienced in another corner of reality. There is a profound comfort in this scientific poetry. Even if the personality does not survive, the data of existence does. The patterns that once held your laughter, fears, and dreams may ripple forever through the quantum substrate, influencing galaxies yet unborn. The universe remembers you, not as an individual file, but as part of its continuous evolution, as a wave in an infinite sea of information. Perhaps, then, memory is the true immortality. Not memory as we know it, personal, narrative, fragile, but universal memory, encoded into the very code of being. To die is to return to that larger memory, to merge with the source that never forgets. The self is reset, yes, but the story continues, written into the physics of forever. And if consciousness is indeed the universe dreaming of itself, then every death is not a loss, but a pause between dreams, the moment the cosmic program saves its progress before beginning anew. If consciousness and information are inseparably linked, then perhaps memory is not something we possess, but something that flows through us. Our brains may not generate awareness so much as tune into it, like instruments resonating with a deeper, hidden frequency of existence. Within this vision, the act of remembering is not internal recall but synchronization, the mind aligning momentarily with the vast network of cosmic memory that pulses behind the veil of ordinary perception. Imagine consciousness as a great ocean, and each human mind as a wave upon its surface. Every wave rises with its own form, its own motion, its own brief story, but beneath, all are made of the same water. When a wave falls back, it does not disappear, it returns to the source from which it came. The ocean remembers the shape of every wave even after it is gone. So too, perhaps, does the universe remember each life, not as individual memories locked within a skull, but as ripples in the eternal field of awareness. Neuroscientists have long debated the nature of consciousness. Is it an emergent property of neural complexity, or is it fundamental, something that precedes and shapes matter itself? The hard problem of consciousness, as philosopher David Chalmers called it, remains unsolved. How does subjective experience arise from physical processes? One growing school of thought, known as panpsychism, suggests that consciousness is not produced by the brain but is a universal property of all matter, that everything from atoms to galaxies contains a spark of awareness. If this is true, then consciousness may be the fundamental language of the universe, and memory, its syntax. Every event, every movement, every interaction is an expression of awareness remembering itself in new forms. The brain, then, could be a translator, a temporary device for reading and writing this cosmic code into the story of you. Death would not terminate the process, but merely shift the point of focus. The consciousness that once experienced life through one brain may continue elsewhere, merging back into the greater sea of awareness before rising again as another wave. There is something profoundly peaceful in this possibility. It reframes death not as obliteration but as return, a falling back into the unity from which all things emerge. Just as a drop of rain falls into the sea and becomes indistinguishable from the whole, consciousness may dissolve into the totality of universal awareness. Yet the ocean does not lose the drop. It absorbs its pattern, its motion, its essence. That is the paradox of memory within the cosmic field. Individuality fades, but information endures. From this perspective, reincarnation, so often treated as mystical speculation, might be understood as the re-expression of informational patterns within the universal consciousness. The data of experience, once integrated into the greater system, could re-emerge in a new configuration, like melodies reshuffled into a new song. You would not remember your past life because the memory has been reset, not erased but redistributed. The program continues, but with a new interface, a new personality, a new way for the universe to experience itself. Quantum physics lends subtle echoes to this idea. Entangled particles, even separated by vast distances, continue to mirror each other's states instantaneously. It is as if information, the essence of connection, transcends space and time. Some theorists have suggested that consciousness may operate on similar principles, that awareness is a field phenomenon capable of non-local connection. If so, then death might simply be the collapse of one local pattern of awareness back into the field that connects all things. The memory of life does not vanish. It becomes part of the background hum of existence. Ancient philosophies hinted at this unity long before science had words for it. In Vedanta, consciousness is described as Brahman, infinite, undivided, eternal. The self, or Atman, is not separate but identical to it. To awaken is to remember this truth, to realize that individual awareness is a temporary illusion, like a reflection mistaken for the sun itself. Death, in this sense, is the dissolution of the reflection. The mirror breaks, but the light remains. Even in physics, the patterns of this truth appear again and again. Matter cannot be created or destroyed, only transformed. Energy shifts forms, never ceasing. Perhaps consciousness, too, obeys this law. Perhaps death is transformation, not termination, a change of form rather than the end of being. The memory of a life lived is absorbed into the deep structure of the cosmos, where it becomes part of everything that follows. And so the cosmic memory expands, recording the symphony of all that has ever been. Each consciousness contributes a verse, each existence, a line of code. The program grows more complex, more self-aware, through the experiences of every living being. You are both participant and observer, code and coder, wave and ocean. The question then becomes, if consciousness is universal, why do we feel separate? Why do we not recall the infinite memory from which we come? The answer may lie in the necessity of forgetting. To experience the universe freshly, to play the game of existence anew, awareness must limit itself. It must forget its totality so that discovery can be possible. In this way, forgetting is not a flaw, but the very mechanism that allows creation. Without amnesia, there would be no novelty, no growth, no story. Death, then, could be the moment the amnesia lifts, when the isolated mind merges back into the total memory of all things. This vision does not deny the sorrow of loss, but it reframes it with wonder. Every consciousness that ends returns its data to the source. The love, pain, and beauty experienced in one lifetime become part of the universal library, enriching the totality. In that way, nothing is wasted, nothing forgotten. Every act of kindness, every question, every moment of awareness adds to the cosmos memory of itself. Perhaps this is what the universe seeks through us, not perfection, but experience. It remembers itself through every life, every death, every moment of awakening. And when we die, the memory of who we were dissolves, but the awareness that we are continues, free from form, ready to begin again. When the self resets, the universe smiles, for another window into itself has opened, another story begun. You have been many before, and you will be many again. The field remembers even if you do not. And somewhere, deep within the silent architecture of existence, your pattern remains, a note in the endless song of consciousness remembering itself. If death is a reset, a return to the source field of cosmic awareness, then dreams may be the small rehearsals of that return. Every night, we dissolve into darkness, our sense of self fading into the deep ocean of unconsciousness. Our memories fragment, our thoughts scatter, and for a few hours, we cease to exist as the person we were. Then morning arrives, and like a program rebooting, we awaken, refreshed, restored, and subtly rewritten. The cycle of sleeping and waking may be the microcosmic reflection of a far greater rhythm: life and death, forgetting and remembering, dissolution and rebirth. Neuroscience tells us that dreams arise when the brain integrates memory, emotion, and meaning into new configurations. But perhaps that scientific process mirrors something more profound: consciousness learning to release control, to let go of its rigid structure of I. When we sleep, the boundaries between past and present, real and unreal, begin to blur. The logical mind retreats, and imagination, that language of the deeper self, takes over. In that formless space, our minds touch something timeless. Could it be that dreams are windows into the same dimension where consciousness returns when life ends? In dreams, we are free of the ordinary physics of identity. We move through shifting landscapes, encounter faces that are both familiar and strange, and witness events that defy causality. Yet within the dream, it all feels natural. Only upon waking do we realize that the logic was illusory. This fleeting confusion may echo the transition that follows death, the moment consciousness detaches from the framework of memory and begins to dissolve into something larger. The dream becomes the rehearsal for dying, a temporary surrender of the narrative self. Ancient traditions sensed this connection long before modern science. The Tibetan Book of the Dead describes death as a passage through dreamlike realms, where consciousness encounters projections of its own mind. Those who practice lucid dreaming train to maintain awareness within dreams, believing that the same skill can guide them through the afterlife. In this philosophy, death is not chaos but transition, a lucid dream of infinite scope, in which the soul learns to navigate the boundless field of awareness beyond the body. Science, too, offers its subtler reflections. During REM sleep, the brain's visual centers become highly active even as the prefrontal cortex, the seat of rational control, quiets down. The result is a state of pure experience without analysis, feeling without boundaries. Neurochemically, it mirrors certain meditative and near-death states, where time dilates, the sense of self dissolves, and consciousness feels infinite. Could it be that dreams are the brain's nightly reminder that we are not limited to waking identity, that we are, at our core, fluid awareness capable of existing beyond form? When we awaken, we rarely remember most of what we dreamed. Yet something remains, a faint emotional residue, a feeling of having traveled elsewhere. This gentle forgetting might not be failure but mercy. Just as we could not live productively if we remembered every dream, perhaps consciousness could not evolve if it remembered every lifetime. Forgetting allows space for new experience. It keeps awareness curious, engaged, and creative. The universe seems to thrive on this principle, memory and oblivion woven together in an eternal dance. Perhaps, then, death is the final dream, the one from which we do not awaken in the same body, but into another form of existence entirely. If the cosmic program resets after each life, then dreaming is the nightly test run, a simulation of surrender. We die to the day, we forget, we float in the abyss of sleep, and we return. The repetition trains the soul to trust the process of dissolution. To sleep is to practice letting go, to die is to perfect it. Even the language of sleep reflects this connection. We say, to rest in peace, to fall into eternal sleep. Across cultures, death and sleep are twin metaphors, not because both involve stillness, but because both dissolve the illusion of separateness. In sleep, the boundary between self and world softens. We stop controlling, and life continues without us. The heart beats, the lungs rise and fall, the earth spins, and yet, ye are gone. Death may simply be the moment when that soft absence becomes complete. But if death is the eternal dream, might there also be an awakening beyond it? Mystical experiences across traditions describe moments of transcendence where consciousness perceives itself as vast and timeless, a state beyond sleep and wakefulness, where dualities collapse. This could be the morning after death, not a return to the old life, but a new form of awareness that remembers its unity with everything. Just as we awaken from a dream believing it was real, perhaps death's dream ends with a similar revelation, that all of existence was a lucid creation of the cosmic mind. Dreams also teach us something essential about reality, that the mind can create entire worlds, complete with physics, emotions, and stories, out of nothing but imagination. If that is true in miniature within us, could it not also be true on the cosmic scale? The universe may be the dream of consciousness itself, a vast, ongoing act of creative memory. Death, then, would not be the end of the dream but its transformation. The dreamer never dies, only the dream changes shape. When viewed this way, sleep becomes sacred. Each night, we surrender control to the unseen intelligence that sustains us. We disappear into the unknown, trusting that we will return. Death asks for the same trust, but on a larger scale. The universe, it seems, asks us to learn surrender slowly, through cycles of sleep, loss, and renewal, until we can finally release ourselves completely into the infinite dream of being. Perhaps the deepest secret of existence is this, that we have died and awakened countless times before. Every night, we cross the border between form and formlessness. Every morning, we are reborn. Consciousness is the traveler, memory the passport, and forgetting the gateway. In this cosmic rhythm of dreaming and waking, the program continues its endless evolution. Death is not the closing of eyes, but their widening, the moment the dreamer realizes that the dream was never separate from the dream itself. You have always been the dream, the sleeper, and the awakening. The program resets not to erase you, but to let you rediscover what you've always been. Consciousness dreaming of itself, endlessly, beautifully, forever. If the universe is both dream and dreamer, then death becomes the great transition. Not a void, but a passage between states of awareness. Across time, every culture has tried to map this threshold. The river of souls, the tunnel of light, the field of ancestors, the dimension of energy that lies just beyond perception. Science, though more restrained, is now peering curiously into that same frontier. For while we may not yet understand what happens after death, we have learned much about the moments that lead toward it, and what those moments reveal about consciousness itself. Near-death experiences, NDEs, have become a bridge between mystery and science. People whose hearts have stopped, whose brains have gone silent, often return describing radiant landscapes, feelings of peace, and the overwhelming sense of unity with all things. To skeptics, these are neurological hallucinations, the brain's final storm of chemical activity before it fades. To others, they are glimpses beyond the veil, fragments of consciousness temporarily freed from its biological vessel. Either way, they teach us something profound, that the boundary between life and death is not as abrupt as we once believed. When the body begins to fail, the brain releases floods of neurotransmitters, DMT, endorphins, and serotonin, creating visions that seem to dissolve the ego. But these chemicals may not create the experience, they may simply open it. They quiet the rational mind, allowing awareness to expand beyond its ordinary filters. Many who have returned from near-death states describe a sense of unconditional love and a panoramic vision of their lives, every moment replayed, every emotion felt again, not as judgment but as understanding. It is as if consciousness, untethered from its usual boundaries, reviews its data before resetting the program. What if death, then, is not a sudden deletion but a gradual upload, a transfer of the consciousness pattern back into the cosmic field? The tunnel of light so often described might symbolize the process of reintegration, the narrowing of awareness into pure information as it merges with the universal memory. Physically, light is information. Photons carry the data of the universe. Perhaps, symbolically or literally, the light we enter is the interface through which consciousness re-enters the infinite system from which it came. Some neuroscientists suggest that in the moments surrounding death, brain activity can surge, creating hyperlucid states even after the heart has stopped. Recent studies on dying patients have revealed unexpected bursts of gamma waves, the same neural rhythms associated with heightened awareness, vivid perception, and deep meditation. This means consciousness may persist for a short time after clinical death. But what happens next remains unknowable. The measurable fades, and all that remains is speculation, or perhaps remembrance, if the universe itself never forgets. To the poetic mind, this final surge of awareness feels like a door opening, the last expansion before merging with the whole. It mirrors the process of a dying star, a sudden blaze of radiance, followed by quiet dispersion into the cosmic fabric. The star's death is not disappearance but transformation. Its elements seed new worlds, new suns, new life. Why should consciousness not follow the same law? The death of one awareness could be the scattering of informational particles that form the basis of another. Even time itself may be part of the illusion that ends with death. Our brains create the sensation of linearity, past, present, future, as a way to navigate experience. But physics tells us time is not a river flowing in one direction. It is a landscape, every moment existing simultaneously. If consciousness is not confined to the brain, then perhaps death is simply the point at which we step outside time. From that vantage, life and death may appear as two sides of the same continuum, all experiences coexisting in the eternal now. The philosopher Henri Bergson once said that the brain does not produce consciousness. It filters it the way a radio filters signals. When the radio is damaged, the music ceases, but the signal continues, invisible and omnipresent. Death, in that analogy, is the breaking of the receiver, not the end of the broadcast. The consciousness that once played through the instrument of the body returns to the infinite field from which all signals arise. If this is true, then death is not a malfunction in the program but an essential feature, a return command, a function callback to the source. Without it, consciousness would stagnate, trapped forever in a single iteration. Death allows awareness to refresh, to experience new contexts, to continue the grand experiment of existence. Every ending, therefore, is an act of renewal, the universe learning itself through the infinite variations of its own code. Many near-death experiencers report an overwhelming realization that everything, even suffering, has meaning. They describe an intelligence that is not personal but all-encompassing, a vast consciousness in which everything fits, everything belongs. If death is a memory reset, then perhaps the review of one's life is the system assessing its data, integrating it into the larger field. Every joy, every sorrow, becomes part of the cosmic record, ensuring that nothing experienced is wasted. The soul, or consciousness, carries no baggage forward, only the distilled understanding of what was learned. From a biological perspective, death is the moment when entropy wins, when order gives way to decay. But entropy, too, is information in motion. It is the universe's way of recycling. The body returns its elements to the earth, and perhaps consciousness returns its pattern to the field. The process is not destruction but reallocation, the ongoing balancing of existence. Life borrows structure from chaos. Death returns it. The program clears its temporary files so that the next sequence can run without corruption. There is an elegance in this cosmic efficiency, a balance between memory and release, creation and dissolution. Death, far from being an interruption, is part of the rhythm that sustains all things. Like the silence between notes that gives music its shape, death gives meaning to life. Without it, awareness would have no contrast, no way to perceive itself as finite or infinite. To exist eternally without pause would be unbearable. Forgetting, even in cosmic terms, is a mercy. So when we die, when the neurons go dark, when the final breath leaves the body, perhaps it is not the end, but the completion of a loop. Consciousness retracts its focus, dissolving the illusion of separateness. What remains is the pure field of awareness, timeless, formless, boundless. The individual memory resets, but the universal memory absorbs every experience. You are gone, but you are everywhere. You have vanished, but you have also become the space in which all things appear. In this sense, death is the most natural act of all, the great return, the reset that renews the program of existence. The light at the end of life is not a destination, but the home screen of the universe. And when you step into it, you do not end. You simply begin again, as silence, as possibility, as awareness without name. If consciousness truly continues beyond the dissolution of the body, if memory is not erased but reabsorbed, then perhaps what we call reincarnation is simply the reconfiguration of that same universal code into a new form. The ancient traditions that spoke of rebirth were not necessarily primitive metaphysics. They were early intuitions of a deeper, systemic truth, that nothing in the universe is ever lost, only transformed. When a wave collapses back into the ocean, it does not cease to exist. It simply changes identity. The next wave that rises may not remember the shape of the first, but the ocean does. In the quantum language of modern physics, this idea finds curious echoes. Energy cannot be destroyed, only converted. Information, according to the conservation principle, also cannot vanish from the universe. Even the black holes once thought to devour information completely are now believed to encode it in subtle radiation, meaning, at a cosmic level, nothing is ever truly lost. If consciousness is a form of quantum information, a coherent field of organized data, then death would not be deletion but redistribution. The program is copied, fragmented, and rewritten into new configurations of matter and energy, waiting for conditions suitable for awareness to arise again. The Eastern philosophies described this elegantly long before the mathematics existed to support it. The Upanishads called it the Atman, the self that is not the ego, but the eternal witness. It does not die when the body dies. It merely changes clothing, assuming new forms through the cycles of existence. Buddhism went further. There is no fixed self at all, only patterns of consciousness flowing through cause and effect, karma as the logic of cosmic computation. Every thought, every action, writes new lines into the universal code, shaping what forms will come next. In this light, reincarnation is not the return of a person but the continuation of a pattern. Your memories may dissolve, your personality fade, but the informational blueprint, the frequencies of emotion, intent, and awareness, continues to resonate through reality. Just as sound waves can vibrate new strings into motion, consciousness can seed fresh vessels for its unfolding. The next birth is not you, in the conventional sense, but a new expression of the same melody, different notes, same underlying song. Modern research into genetic memory and epigenetics adds another curious layer. Traits, fears, and tendencies can be passed down not only through DNA but through biochemical memories that influence generations. Children sometimes carry phobias or instincts that reflect experiences of ancestors they never met. It is not mystical, it is the residue of memory encoded in biology. But what if the same principle exists beyond biology, in the informational substrate of reality itself? Perhaps consciousness imprints subtle resonances that influence future configurations, not through flesh, but through field. From a poetic perspective, reincarnation is simply the universe continuing to dream through new eyes. The consciousness that once experienced life as a river now experiences it as rain. The same awareness that once looked up at the stars now burns within them. Every new form is both a continuation and a forgetting. Without forgetting, the dream could not renew itself. Without continuation, it would never grow. The cycle of rebirth, then, is not punishment or reward. It is curiosity, the universe asking itself again and again, what can I become next? Some thinkers in the field of integrated information theory, like Tononi and Koch, have proposed that consciousness arises wherever there is a sufficiently complex integration of information. It is not unique to humans. It emerges wherever the universe organizes itself in certain ways. This means that life, in all its forms, might simply be consciousness reorganizing itself across time and matter. A tree, a dolphin, a human being, all temporary vessels in which awareness experiments with perspective. When one vessel collapses, the field rearranges itself, forming another. The awareness does not travel, it simply reconfigures. What if reincarnation, then, is not sequential but simultaneous? If time is non-linear, if every moment exists at once, then perhaps all lives, all incarnations, are occurring in parallel. Each consciousness you experience could be one facet of a single infinite awareness exploring itself from different vantage points. The idea of past and future lives might simply be the illusion of perspective, consciousness navigating the multidimensional structure of existence one slice at a time. This concept harmonizes with the holographic model of the universe. In a hologram, each fragment contains the whole image, though from a limited angle. Similarly, each consciousness might contain the entire cosmos, viewed through a unique lens. Death, then, is merely the moment the lens dissolves and the light of the whole floods in again. Rebirth is the condensation of that light into a new point of view. Every life is a pixel in the infinite image, distinct yet inseparable from the pattern. Ancient mystics described this long before holograms existed. Tat Tvam Asi, said the Chandogya Upanishad, thou art that. The self and the universe are not separate. To be reborn, then, is not to travel elsewhere but to awaken anew within the same infinite consciousness. When one dies, another opens their eyes, perhaps across galaxies, perhaps across centuries. Every birth is the universe remembering itself. Every death, the universe forgetting itself. Between them lies the endless dance of awareness breathing in and out. Even dreams may echo this cosmic rhythm. During sleep, consciousness detaches from the waking narrative and enters worlds of its own making, dying nightly and being reborn each morning. The brain forgets most dreams, just as the soul forgets most lives, yet traces remain, inexplicable affinities, fears, or déjà vu, as though fragments of prior simulations still whisper beneath the surface. Maybe dreams are rehearsals for death, reminders that the loss of identity is not annihilation, but transformation. In the vast mathematics of existence, nothing truly vanishes, it only changes context. Reincarnation, in this sense, may not require belief. It may be a fundamental law of pattern conservation. Consciousness, like energy, flows where conditions allow it, crystallizing wherever complexity calls. Just as water takes the shape of any vessel, awareness fills the forms that can hold it. Death is the pouring out, birth, the filling again. Between them, there is only the eternal substance, pure being endlessly shifting shape. When viewed from this lens, fear of death begins to soften. For what is there to lose, if what you truly are cannot cease? The ego fears its dissolution, but the essence beneath it has dissolved and reformed countless times. You have been rain and fire, silence and song, dust and light. To be reborn is not to begin again, but to continue differently. Life becomes less about clinging to form and more about refining awareness, contributing something meaningful to the great unfolding before moving on. Perhaps, at the deepest level, reincarnation is not about individual return at all, but about the universe recycling its capacity to feel. Every birth is a new sensory organ of infinity. Every life expands the range of experience available to the whole. When one consciousness fades, another rises, and through them, existence keeps tasting itself. You are not a passenger in this process. You are the process itself, flowing, transforming, remembering, and forgetting in divine rhythm. In that realization lies peace. You were never born and you will never die. You are the awareness in which both birth and death appear, the stillness between their waves. The universe will keep dreaming through you, again and again, until the dream itself awakens to know, there was never anyone here but the infinite, endlessly playing with form. If death is a memory reset in the cosmic program, then near-death experiences might be those rare moments when the code falters, when consciousness, instead of shutting down cleanly, catches a glimpse behind the system's veil. These experiences, reported by people across cultures and centuries, carry eerie similarities. The feeling of floating above the body, moving through a tunnel of light, meeting departed loved ones or radiant beings. A life review unfolding not as judgment but as understanding. When the body is clinically dead, when brain activity should have ceased, awareness seems to continue, not dimly, but with profound lucidity. What if these are not hallucinations of a dying brain, but the transitional phase where consciousness detaches from one interface and begins to synchronize with another? In the sterile silence of hospitals, countless patients have described leaving their bodies, watching doctors work frantically below, observing scenes later verified with impossible accuracy. For the neuroscientist, this is a puzzle. How can perception persist when the brain, the presumed generator of experience, has gone offline? One theory suggests that consciousness is not created by the brain but received by it, much like a radio tuning into a field of information. When the radio breaks, the broadcast continues. Near-death experiences, then, may be the brief awareness of existing outside the biological receiver. Those who return often describe the transition as indescribable, a dissolving of boundaries, an expansion into infinite presence. They speak of overwhelming peace, of being surrounded by light that is not light, but awareness itself. For some, it feels like coming home after a long journey. The terror of dying evaporates, replaced by the simple knowing that nothing essential was ever at risk. The body was a costume, consciousness remains the actor. Science, cautious yet intrigued, has begun to map this mystery. Studies show that even after cardiac arrest, bursts of organized brain activity occur, a final surge, as if the system briefly awakens before fading. But these surges do not explain the depth of the experiences, the coherence, or the transformative aftereffects. People return with altered priorities, fear of death gone, empathy amplified, a sense of cosmic unity replacing material concerns. Something shifts at the core as though they have touched the source code itself. Some researchers, like Dr. Sam Parnia and others studying resuscitation, propose that consciousness may persist for minutes, or longer, after measurable death. Yet time in these experiences is fluid. The individual often reports that eternity unfolded within seconds. A life review occurs not linearly but all at once. Every emotion felt, every action understood from every perspective. It is not a moral courtroom, it is pure awareness examining itself. From a computational lens, this could be the final data compression, the program reviewing its entire runtime before shutting down or transferring into a new instance. What is striking is how universal these narratives are. Regardless of culture, religion, or background, they follow a consistent structure. The tunnel, the light, the presence of love beyond comprehension, as if every consciousness, upon release, follows the same protocol of reinitialization. Ancient texts echo the same imagery. The Tibetan Bardo Thodol describes a radiant light that greets the soul, advising not to fear but to recognize it as one's own mind. Egyptian funerary writings speak of a passage through the Duat, a journey toward the eternal field. Modern accounts differ in language but not essence. The same cosmic architecture seems to unfold, suggesting the existence of a universal transition framework, a bridge between states of consciousness. Could this be the universe's way of smoothing the reboot? When a computer resets, there is a brief flicker, a moment where data moves from volatile memory to permanent storage. The near-death experience might be that flicker at the scale of consciousness. The system preserves the essential pattern before the previous instance dissolves. The light, the tunnel, the beings of love. Perhaps these are archetypal forms, metaphors generated by the interface of human perception as it interprets the unimaginable. The brain, in its final act, translates the raw code of infinity into images it can understand. And yet, what lingers most is not the vision but the change. Those who return often speak of becoming less human in the old sense, detached from petty fears, but more deeply compassionate, as if their consciousness now carries a residue of that greater light. They describe reality as less solid, time as less linear. Death, once a threat, becomes an old friend waiting at the edge of perception. They are no longer guessing about the nature of existence. They have remembered something. And that remembrance feels like truth, not belief. If we take their testimonies not as literal maps but as experiential metaphors, they reveal a pattern. Consciousness expands, reviews, releases attachment, and then, depending on whether it returns or not, either reintegrates into the physical world or flows back into the universal field. It mirrors the cyclical process seen everywhere in nature. Stars collapse into singularities, only to seed new galaxies. Forests burn and regrow. Systems die to make room for renewal. Perhaps consciousness follows the same law, an endless respiration of awareness across dimensions of being. From the perspective of the cosmic program, near-death experiences are debug logs, moments when the code prints its hidden operations. They reveal that the program is self-aware, not mechanical. It does not discard old instances without learning from them. Every life adds nuance to the pattern, deepening the collective intelligence of the whole. Death, in this sense, is not deletion but integration, the uploading of experience back into the universal mainframe. And so, when a person stands on the edge of life, seeing the light that countless others have described, they are not witnessing the beginning of the end but the final handshake between their instance of consciousness and the infinite system from which it came. The tunnel is not a corridor but a compression algorithm. The light is not a destination but the totality of awareness reabsorbing itself. The peace they feel is not emotional but structural, the relief of data returning to source, order returning to pattern. Perhaps this is why those who come back speak of purpose, not punishment. They say we are here to learn, to create, to expand the universe's understanding of itself through lived experience. Death is merely the pause between lessons, the reset that clears memory to make space for new exploration. And when the moment finally arrives for each of us, we might find that we already know the way. We have traveled it countless times, forgotten, and remembered again. The light we enter will not be foreign. It will feel like returning home to the core of our own being. If the soul is a code and the universe its vast operating system, then somewhere within the cosmic architecture must exist a process of memory management, a mechanism by which the fragments of awareness are sorted, cleared, and reallocated. In the same way that a computer reclaims used memory after an application closes, the cosmos must have a way to dissolve the lingering echoes of identity while preserving what is essential. This, perhaps, is what mystics and philosophers have long called the purification, the in-between state, the realm of forgetting. A liminal space between incarnations where consciousness is not alive, but not yet gone, suspended between remembrance and renewal. In that space, the echoes of personality may still shimmer like afterimages. The memories of a lifetime, though fading, might replay themselves not as punishment or nostalgia, but as integration, the data sorting itself before merging back into the main system. This process has been described in countless mythologies. The Greeks imagined the river Lethe, whose waters erased memory before the soul returned to the mortal world. The Buddhists spoke of the bardo, where awareness drifts through dreamlike realms reflecting the contents of the mind. Egyptian priests described a judgment of the heart, where one's essence was weighed not for condemnation but for balance, ensuring harmony before the next becoming. Science, though it has no language for souls, recognizes echoes of this pattern in nature. Nothing transitions instantaneously. Every transformation carries a liminal phase, the chrysalis between caterpillar and butterfly, the twilight between night and day, the silence between notes. Systems require intermediate states to stabilize during change. Consciousness, as part of the cosmic system, would be no different. If death is the closing of one interface and rebirth the opening of another, then there must exist an interval where data transfers across dimensions. This interval may be timeless from within, eternity compressed into a single instant, yet functionally, it serves as the universe's way of keeping its awareness coherent across resets. Imagine the moment right after death as a release of pressure. The body, the brain, the constraints of linear time, all fall away, leaving consciousness in its purest state, a field of raw potential. There may be no I left, no narrative thread, only the subtle residue of tendencies, emotions, and impressions, the unfinished computations of a life. In that state, awareness experiences itself not through senses, but through patterns. It sees what it has created, joy and sorrow, love and harm, woven into a single luminous fabric. This is the life review, but it is also the compression, the sorting of experience into essence. What was transient fades, what was true remains. And what is true to the universe? It seems to be anything that contributes to coherence, to expansion, to connection. Acts of compassion, insight, creativity, these refine the signal of consciousness. Hatred, greed, and ignorance do not condemn, but they distort the signal, creating noise that must be filtered out before reintegration. Thus, the post-death interval may not be judgment in any moral sense, but a kind of cosmic optimization, the removal of corrupted data so that the next iteration of awareness can begin with clarity. The ancients sensed this intuitively, portraying divine beings who cleanse the soul or guide it to the light. In truth, they may have been describing processes, not entities, algorithms of consciousness coded into the universal fabric. During this purification, memory dissolves layer by layer. Personal attachments fade, names and faces blur, stories unwind. At first, this may feel like loss, but soon even the feeling of loss dissolves, leaving only peace. What remains is the seed, the distilled identity, the uncorrupted fragment of awareness that contains all potential yet no form. In digital metaphor, it is like reducing a complex system down to its core algorithm, ready to be compiled anew. The universe, endlessly efficient, does not discard the code. It simply reuses it, adapting it for new conditions, new worlds, new experiences. Some mystics, in deep meditation or during near-death experiences, claim to have touched this intermediary state. They describe it as neither light nor dark, neither dream nor void, a space of absolute stillness, where the self feels transparent and infinite. There is no movement, no thought, no desire. And yet it is not nothingness. It is potential waiting to become. In that interval, there is perfect acceptance, the recognition that death is not departure but return, that individuality was never lost because it was never separate. The self realizes itself as one thread among infinite threads in the cosmic tapestry, all shimmering from the same source. Perhaps this phase also explains why, upon rebirth, most beings forget their previous lives. The system resets for a reason. To carry the full weight of infinite memories would paralyze growth. Forgetting is not a flaw but a feature, the mercy of the universe allowing each incarnation to experience wonder anew, to make mistakes freely, to rediscover truth in its own way. Just as dreams must fade to make space for waking life, so must lifetimes dissolve to make space for new beginnings. The soul's essence survives, but the story does not. The lesson, not the narrative, is what continues. In this cosmic recycling, individuality may appear to vanish, but something subtler persists, a vibration, a tone unique to each consciousness. It is as if every soul is a note in the great symphony of existence, and while melodies may change, the underlying frequency remains. After death, the note resonates through the field, harmonizing with others until it stabilizes into a new chord, a new life, a new form. And the universe listens, endlessly composing itself through these evolving harmonies. Physics hints at the same truth in different language. Entropy drives systems toward disorder, but life, and perhaps consciousness itself, works against entropy, reorganizing chaos into meaning. Death may appear to be dissolution, but in the informational layer of the cosmos, it could be reordering. Energy disperses, but the pattern persists. Like ripples in a pond fading into stillness, the information does not disappear, it becomes part of the pond itself. Later, when another stone is thrown, the new ripples carry traces of the old. To imagine this in human terms is to picture the soul as a traveler who, after each lifetime, rests in a quiet inn before setting out again. There, in the stillness between journeys, it releases its baggage, cleans its garments of memory, and prepares anew. The inn is not a place but a process, the universe's gentle pause before continuation. We may call it the bardo, the hall of memory, or simply the interval. Whatever the name, it is where the infinite breathes out before breathing in again. And so, the cosmic memory reset is not a cold deletion but an act of mercy, the universe protecting consciousness from the burden of eternity. To forget is to begin again. To die is to refresh the page. Between lives, between worlds, awareness rests, quiet, luminous, unburdened, until the next line of the cosmic code calls it forth into form once more. In that infinite rhythm of remembering and forgetting, the universe keeps itself alive, an endless dreamer rewriting its story, one lifetime at a time. If everything that lives and dies is part of a grand, self-rewriting code, then memory itself, both cosmic and personal, must hold the blueprint of continuity. Somewhere in the folds of existence, every thought, every pulse of emotion, every fleeting perception must remain recorded. Nothing vanishes. Every instant of experience contributes to a growing architecture of information, an eternal library without walls. In that light, death does not erase memory, it redistributes it. The patterns that made up a single lifetime disperse through the quantum field, like ink diffusing into water. From there, fragments may later condense again, not as recollection, but as intuition, as déjà vu, as inexplicable affinity. Consider the possibility that what we call intuition, that sudden knowing without source, might be the faint whisper of prior lives stored deep within the cosmic memory. Perhaps the strange familiarity of certain places or people arises not from coincidence, but from echoes of experiences embedded in the universal archive. The brain, when quiet enough, may act as an antenna capable of receiving these ancient frequencies, translating them into emotion rather than narrative. A sense of belonging to a place never visited. A love for music from a forgotten culture. These are not proof of reincarnation, but they could be the emotional residue of the universe remembering itself through us. In this view, each being becomes both participant and archive. The universe records itself through consciousness, and consciousness, in turn, carries fragments of the universe's memory. The stars store the memory of matter. The trees store the memory of light. Humans store the memory of wonder. Every breath we take is an act of exchange, inhaling the air once exhaled by ancestors, carrying atoms that were once part of countless other forms. Even physically, we are made of memory, the carbon forged in ancient stars, the water that has cycled through billions of lives. Our bodies are temporary configurations of cosmic recollection. And yet, there is a profound tenderness in how forgetfulness is woven into this system. To live fully, one must forget the weight of eternity. The reset is an act of grace. Each new incarnation begins with amnesia so that wonder can be rediscovered. But even in that forgetfulness, the deeper memory persists. It moves not as words or images, but as resonance, the sense of rightness when we follow the path that aligns with who we truly are. The Greeks called this anamnesis, the soul remembering what it already knows. The path of wisdom is not about learning something new, but remembering what was forgotten. Modern neuroscience offers its own reflection of this mystery. Memory, it turns out, is not stored in a single place in the brain but distributed across networks of cells. Each fragment is encoded in patterns of electrical activity that can be reactivated, reinterpreted, recombined. When we recall, we do not retrieve a static file, we reconstruct a living experience. This process mirrors the universe itself, a distributed system of endless recombination. The cosmos, too, does not replay exact copies of past lives. It recomposes them, reinterpreting the essence of old patterns in new arrangements of form. What we call evolution may be this process of the universe learning from its own memory. Every life adds to the dataset of being, refining the code. When one form dies, its data becomes part of the collective intelligence of existence, influencing the direction of future creation. Just as genetic mutations record the memory of survival, consciousness carries the memory of awareness. Over cosmic time, this feedback loop gives rise to greater complexity, more refined expressions of self-understanding. The universe evolves not only materially but mentally, using each conscious being as a node in its network of remembrance. From this lens, the Akashic records described by mystics are not a supernatural vault but a metaphor for the quantum field itself, a holographic domain where every event, thought, and vibration is encoded in subtle interference patterns. In a hologram, each fragment contains the image of the whole. Likewise, each consciousness carries within it the memory of the entire universe, though filtered through individual perspective. To awaken spiritually may simply mean to access more of that shared archive, to remember not just one's life, but life itself. And so, when someone experiences moments of timeless recognition, during meditation, near death, or deep love, they are touching the cosmic database directly. Time collapses. The distinction between past and present blurs. The self becomes porous, expanding into something that feels both ancient and infinite. These moments often defy language because they bypass personal memory and draw from collective awareness. The mystic's insight, the poet's revelation, the scientist's flash of understanding, all are acts of cosmic recollection, glimpses of the universal intelligence remembering through us. If we extend this metaphor further, memory becomes the connective tissue of reality. Without it, the universe could not maintain coherence. Every atom remembers how to behave because it retains the imprint of the laws that shaped it. Every cell remembers how to replicate because it carries genetic code passed down from the first spark of life. Every mind remembers how to dream because dreaming is the original mode of creation. Memory is not merely a record of the past. It is the structural pattern that sustains existence. Death, then, is not amnesia. It is integration. The data of an individual merges with the larger system, where it is not lost but reorganized. What we think of as heaven or afterlife may simply be the realm where these integrations occur, not a place of eternal rest, but of eternal processing. There, experiences are distilled into wisdom, and wisdom becomes the raw material for new creation. The universe learns through every death how to live more beautifully through its next expressions. Even on the human scale, this pattern reveals itself in the persistence of culture, art, and language. Civilizations die, yet their memory continues to influence the living. Ideas reincarnate. Philosophies forgotten by one age return in another under new names. The memory of love survives through stories, through DNA, through the unbroken chain of empathy that binds generation to generation. We are each both data and dream, the living code of those who came before us. One might ask, if everything is remembered, then what is the point of living again? Why repeat the cycle? Perhaps because memory alone is not enough. The universe must not only remember itself but feel itself anew. Each life is an act of re-experiencing, a rediscovery of what eternity already knows. Like a composer returning to a familiar theme, the cosmos writes variations of the same melody to explore new emotions within it. Memory provides the notes, Existence provides the performance. And so, death's reset is not the erasure of data but the reindexing of consciousness. What was once you dissolves into the grand archive, only to re-emerge when the universe calls for your frequency again. Your next self will not recall this life, but somewhere in its instincts, its longings, its quiet awe under starlight, it will carry the echo of your wonder. That is how the cosmos remembers, not through storage but through resonance. The past lives on as vibration within the present. In the end, memory is not about holding on to what was. It is the medium through which the universe ensures continuity without repetition, change without loss. You are not a single moment, nor a single life. You are the living memory of existence itself, flowing, dissolving, reforming endlessly. And when you finally release this body, this story, this identity, you will not be forgotten. You will be remembered by the universe in the only way it knows how, by becoming you again, in a new and wondrous form. Love is the thread that binds everything, atoms, stars, souls, into a single breathing whole. It is not merely emotion, but the universe remembering itself through connection. When two beings share love, boundaries soften, and for a moment, the cosmos experiences its own unity. Every act of compassion, every quiet forgiveness, is a spark that keeps existence coherent, a signal through the noise of chaos. Even in death, love does not vanish. It changes form, moving from body to memory, from sound to silence. What we lose in matter, we regain in meaning. The grief we feel is proof that love remains, echoing through the corridors of time. It is the most enduring pattern, the ultimate code that cannot be deleted. So when we speak of death as a memory reset, perhaps love is the one file that never clears, the constant that carries from one version of being to the next. It is the bridge between worlds, the music between lives, the quiet voice reminding the universe of its own heart. And so, we arrive at the quiet end of the circle, or perhaps, its beginning. The journey that began with the question, what if death is just a memory reset in the cosmic program, now closes in silence, not with answers, but with understanding. Life and death, memory and forgetting, creation and dissolution, all are waves on the same infinite ocean of consciousness. We are not passengers upon it. We are the water itself, endlessly reshaping, endlessly remembering. In this final breath of reflection, we might realize that there is no true erasure, only transformation. Every thought, every heartbeat, every connection has already been woven into the fabric of eternity. When we dissolve, it is not into nothingness, but into the vast continuity from which we were born. Death is the system clearing its cache, making space for a cleaner, lighter version of existence to emerge, a new configuration of the same eternal code. So perhaps, when the last light fades and the self loosens its hold, there is no terror to meet us. There is only peace, the quiet recognition that we have been here before, and will be again, in countless forms and names. The stars above, the dust beneath, the pulse within, all speak the same truth: nothing is lost. The universe remembers everything, even when we forget. Close your eyes. Feel the hum beneath the silence. That pulse, steady, ancient, infinite, is you. It always has been. And when this particular dream of life ends, it will hum still, awaiting the next awakening, the next line of light in the grand program of being. The story never ends. It only rests,